The apartment keys felt cold against my fingers as I walked through the crowded parking garage of the Chicago Grand Hotel. 8 months of searching, endless paperwork, and sleepless nights had finally culminated in this moment. We had secured our first place together, not the downtown loft Rachel had dreamed of, but a decent 2-bedroom near the University District, a sensible choice I'd managed to convince her was right for us. Inside the grand ballroom, golden chandeliers bathed the room in warm light, illuminating guests in designer attire holding crystal wine glasses. My off-the-rack blazer felt inadequate as I searched the crowd for Rachel. I found her beside an elaborate ice sculpture, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder, wearing an emerald dress I'd never seen before. She was engaged in animated conversation with Alexander Pierce, the company's star executive, polished and magnetic, with a kind of smile that seemed calculated rather than genuine. He stood uncomfortably close to her, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. As I approached, I caught pieces of their conversation. "The Seattle project next month," he was saying in a low voice. "We should plan to stay through the weekend. The client presentation ends Wednesday, but I've arranged accommodations until Monday." Rachel glanced up at him with a coy smile. "That seems rather presumptuous, Mr. Pierce." "Alex," he corrected, his fingers tracing small patterns against the fabric of her dress. "And after Denver, I think we're past professional boundaries." Denver. Rachel had told me her Denver trip was for a marketing symposium. I'd picked her up from the airport, noting her relaxed demeanor and the subtle glow that suggested more than conference rooms and PowerPoint presentations. "Hey there," I interrupted, forcing brightness into my voice. "Sorry, I'm running behind." Rachel jumped, her wine nearly spilling. For a heartbeat, her expression wasn't surprise, it was panic, quickly smoothed over. "David," she said, her voice pitched higher than usual. "I wasn't expecting you tonight." "I mentioned it this morning," I replied, confusion creeping in. "Said I'd be here after the bank appointment." Alex's hand slipped from Rachel's back, but not before giving it a subtle squeeze. He extended the same hand to me, his grip firm enough to make a point. "Ah, the professor," he said, making my career sound quaint. "Rachel mentioned you might drop by." "Might," I echoed, looking at Rachel. "I meant you weren't certain about timing," she clarified quickly, "with the apartment paperwork and everything." "The apartment paperwork," I repeated. "You mean finalizing the lease on our first home together?" Alex's eyebrows rose slightly at my tone. "Well, congratulations then. First place together. That's significant." He raised his glass. 2 new chapters. Rachel's smile seemed forced as she clinked her glass against his. "New chapters," she echoed, avoiding my gaze. A woman in a burgundy gown approached, touching Alex's shoulder. "The Hendersons are asking about you. Something about the Portland deal." "Business calls," he said smoothly to Rachel. "Don't forget, we need to review those market analyses before tomorrow morning." He gave her a meaningful look that suggested market analyses were code for something else entirely. "David, enjoy the evening." He melted into the crowd, leaving an awkward silence between us. "You look beautiful," I offered. "New dress." Rachel nodded, still scanning the room nervously. "Bought it last week. Work's been insane lately." "You've barely been home," I agreed, keeping my tone neutral. "But I have exciting news that couldn't wait. The apartment is officially ours." I reached for her hand. "We signed the final papers Thursday." For a moment, genuine joy lit up her face. "Really? Everything went through? What about the plumbing?" "Issues all resolved." I smiled, relieved to see a glimpse of the old Rachel. "The landlord is handling repairs, and they're including parking spaces for both our cars." "That's incredible." For that brief moment, we were us again. But then her phone vibrated, and as she glanced at the screen, her expression shifted. "I need to mingle," she said, already pulling away. "The Thompsons are potential clients, and Alex wants me to." "Alex again," I interrupted. "What happened to Mr. Pierce? You two seem to have become quite familiar." Her eyes flashed. "He's my supervisor, David. Building rapport is part of advancing my career. You know how important this promotion is to me." "To us," I corrected. "It was supposed to be important to us." Rachel's expression softened marginally. "And it is? Just let me handle the office dynamics, okay? We'll celebrate properly tomorrow night, I promise." Before I could respond, she was gone. weaving through the crowd toward a distinguished couple near the appetizer station. Another whiskey. I looked up to find the bartender watching me with practiced neutrality. I'd been nursing the same drink for nearly an hour, watching Rachel work the room while studiously avoiding my section of it. Why not? I pushed my glass forward. Make it a double. As he poured, a elegant blonde in a navy dress settled onto the bar stool beside me. "You must be Rachel's boyfriend," she said without preamble. I turned, surprised. "And you are?" "Victoria Pierce." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Alex's wife, soon to be ex-wife, actually." I nearly choked on my whiskey. "Nice to meet you." A sardonic smile played at her lips as she signaled the bartender. "Gin and tonic. Extra lime." She turned back to me. "You look stunned." "Don't be. Everyone knows Alex and I are divorcing. Everyone except you, apparently." I studied her more carefully designed dress, flawless makeup, diamond earrings that could probably cover my rent for a year. But there was exhaustion in her eyes, a brittleness to her composure. "I'm sorry about your marriage," I offered. She laughed without humor. "Don't be. 12 years was enough. The last 2 were just exit negotiations." She accepted her drink. "So how's domestic bliss?" The question felt loaded. "Fine," I said cautiously. "We just got an apartment together. Actually, congratulations." Her gaze drifted to where Rachel now stood with Alex. "Word of advice, check the lease before you. Sin, make sure both names are on it." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What do you mean?" Victoria's eyes returned to mine, assessing. "You really don't know, do you?" Before I could press further, a commotion near the entrance drew attention. A disheveled man in an ill-fitting suit was arguing with security, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I have every right to be here. I'm a Sterling Industries shareholder." I recognized him from the company newsletter Marcus Webb, a major investor known for his aggressive stance on Sterling's recent acquisitions. Alex smoothly detached himself from his group and approached Marcus. "This isn't the place for don't patronize me, Pierce," Webb spat. The quarterly report vanished. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Right before the board review, the room fell silent, everyone watching with fascination. "You're intoxicated, Marcus," Alex said calmly. "Let security escort you home, and we can discuss this Monday. Discuss how you manipulated the Patterson numbers. How you've been falsifying projections." Webb's voice rose. "Or how you've been sleeping with your staff to keep them compliant." Several gasps rippled through the crowd. My eyes automatically found Rachel, who stood frozen, her face drained of color. "That's enough," Alex snapped, nodding to security. "Remove him." 2 men in dark suits flanked Webb, guiding him toward the exit. "This isn't over, Pierce," he called. "The board will hear everything." As he disappeared, the room erupted in nervous chatter. Alex raised his hands, his composure flawless. "My apologies for the interruption. Marcus has been under considerable stress lately. Now, let's return to celebrating another successful quarter for Sterling Industries." Applause followed, and the jazz band quickly resumed playing. Beside me, Victoria drained her gin and tonic. "And that," she said quietly, "is why I'm taking him for everything in the divorce." I barely heard her, too focused on Rachel's reaction. She wasn't joining the resumed conversations. Instead, she was typing frantically on her phone, her expression tense. Alex caught her eye across the room and made a subtle gesture toward a side corridor. She nodded almost imperceptibly before slipping away. "Excuse me," I muttered to Victoria, sliding off the bar stool. I followed Rachel's path, keeping a discreet distance. The side corridor led to a hallway of conference rooms. At the far end, light spilled from a partially open door. As I approached, I heard voices: Alexa's, low and urgent, Rachel's higher with anxiety. "We can't just ignore this, Alex. If Webb takes this to the board, Webb is a drunk with a vendetta. No one will believe him, but the Patterson projections are documented. If there's even a hint of impropriety, there isn't." He cut her off firmly. "You approved those reports because they were accurate. Remember that, if anyone asks." His tone left no room for debate. "Now we should return before people notice we're missing." "Too late," I said, pushing the door open fully. They sprang apart. Rachel's eyes widened in alarm, while Alex's narrowed in calculation. David, she stammered. This isn't what it looks like, I finished, my voice steady despite the rage building inside. Funny, that's exactly what it looks like. My girlfriend. Having a secret meeting with her boss, who just happens to be getting divorced. Alex straightened his tie, unfazed. Your girlfriend is discussing sensitive company matters with her supervisor. Perhaps you should consider how your baseless accusations could damage her career. Alex, please, Rachel interjected. Let me handle this. Handle me. I laughed coldly, like I'm a problem to be managed. That's not what I meant. I met Victoria, by the way, I continued, watching Rachel's face carefully. Fascinating woman. Seems to know quite a lot about what's happening at Sterling Industries. And between you two, Rachel paled visibly. David, please, let's go somewhere private and talk. Private, like this little rendezvous. I gestured around the room. Or private, like your trip to Denver that wasn't actually a marketing symposium. Alex stepped forward, his patience visibly wearing thin. I think you should listen to Rachel and continue this domestic dispute elsewhere. Just tell me the truth, I said to Rachel, ignoring him completely. Are you sleeping with him? The question hung in the air. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent, which was answer enough. How long? My voice remained controlled. David, please, how long? She swallowed hard. While we were apartment hunting, while we were planning our future together. Is that why we keep postponing moving in together? Because you're too busy screwing your way to a promotion? The slap caught me off guard, the sharp crack echoing in the small room. Rachel stood before me, hands still raised, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe what she'd done. You don't get to talk to me like that, she whispered. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting. And you don't get to pretend I don't exist when it's convenient, then act outraged when I call you on it. Alex stepped between us. This has gone far enough, David. Leave now, or I'll have security escort you out. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the apartment keys. I signed the lease today. Our new place, our future. I set the keys on the conference table with a small, definitive click. It's all yours now. Enjoy it with your boss. Rachel's face crumpled. David, wait! But I was already walking away. Out the door, down the hallway, back through the party where music played and people laughed as if my world hadn't just collapsed. As I reached the exit, a hand caught my arm. I turned to find Victoria. Pierce, her expression surprisingly gentle. If you're leaving, take this. She pressed a business card into my hand. My attorney, you're going to need one. I stared at the card, then back at her. Why are you helping me? She smiled, sad but genuine. Let's just say I have experience with history repeating itself. With that, she disappeared back into the party. I pocketed the card and stepped outside, the cool night air shocking against my flushed skin as I drove away from the Chicago Grand. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me worth seeing anymore. The next week, I stayed at my colleague Thomas's guest room and contacted a lawyer, a former classmate who specialized in tenant law. Since both our names were on the lease application, but only I had completed the final paperwork, we were in legal limbo. Either Rachel would need to qualify for the apartment on her own, or we'd have to forfeit our deposit and find separate places. Rachel called and texted constantly, her messages evolving from defensive to pleading. I blocked her number after the fourth day. When she ambushed me outside the university where I taught, I was prepared. 2 minutes, I said, not inviting her into my office. That's all. She looked terrible, still beautiful, but with dark circles under her eyes and a pallor that suggested sleepless nights. Good. I've been trying to reach you for days, she began, her voice trembling. What happened at the party? It's over. I ended things with Alex. Here's what's going to happen with the apartment. I cut her off. You either take over the full lease by Friday, or we forfeit the deposit and go our separate ways. Your choice. She blinked, clearly not expecting this business-like approach. It's David. I don't want to talk about the apartment. I want to talk about us. There is no us anymore, I said flatly, checking my watch. You made that clear when you chose your career and your boss over our relationship. It wasn't like that, she protested. Alex and it was a mistake, a stupid work situation that got out of hand for 4 months. I raised an eyebrow. That's quite a long mistake. She flinched. I deserve that. But David, what we had 3 years together, that's worth fighting for, isn't it? What we had died the moment you decided I wasn't worth acknowledging at that party, I said firmly. Your 2 minutes are up. Let me know about the apartment by Friday. David, please. She caught the door before I could close it. I love you. Despite everything, I still love you. No, you don't, I said with certainty. You love the idea of Mitha safe backup plan while you've played corporate games with Pierce. But I'm not that guy anymore. Goodbye, Rachel. I closed the door firmly and turned back to preparing for my next lecture. That evening, Rachel emailed to say she'd take over the full lease. 3 days later, I signed away my rights to the apartment, collected my portion of the security deposit, and walked away from our dream home without ever having lived in it. I used part of the money to rent a small studio apartment downtown, put the rest into savings. Fresh Start Fund. I labeled it in my banking app. Moving out of our shared place took less than 2 hours, 3 years together, and I could fit my personal belongings into 8 boxes and 2 pieces of furniture. Rachel arranged to be at work when I came for my things, leaving a letter on the kitchen counter that I threw away without reading. I left the promise ring on the counter at $800 band that had taken 3 months of overtime to afford. Clean break, Thomas advised as he helped load the last box. Best way to handle these things. Already done, I assured him. The moment I'd seen Rachel with her boss, something had switched off inside me. There was no going back. No second-guessing, just forward movement. 3 weeks after the party, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Is this David Chen? Yes. Who's this? Agent Sarah Kim, FBI. I'm investigating financial irregularities at Sterling Industries and would like to ask you some questions. My stomach dropped. I don't work for Sterling. No, but your girlfriend does. Or rather did. Ms. Martinez resigned from Sterling last week. I assumed you were aware. We're no longer together, I said simply. I haven't spoken to her recently. See, a pause. Mr. Chen, what I'm about to tell you is sensitive. There's an active federal investigation into Sterling Industries, specifically regarding the Patterson acquisition. Several executives, including Alexander Pierce, are under scrutiny for securities fraud, falsifying financial statements, and wire fraud. And Rachel, is she under investigation too? That's part of why I'm calling. Ms. Martinez has agreed to cooperate with our investigation in exchange for immunity. She's provided valuable information about the inner workings of the fraud scheme. I laughed without humor. Let me guess, she's claiming she knew nothing about it until recently. Agent Kim's voice remained neutral. I can't discuss the details of her testimony. However, we believe you might have information relevant to our case. Were you present at the Sterling corporate event at the Chicago Grand 3 weeks ago? Yes. Did you witness an altercation involving Marcus Webb? I recounted what I'd seen and heard, including Webb's accusations about manipulated numbers. And did Ms. Martinez ever discuss the Patterson acquisition with you? Not in detail, I admitted. She mentioned working long hours on it, but nothing specific about the financials. What about Alexander Pierce? Did she discuss her relationship with him? If you're asking whether I knew they were sleeping together, the answer is no, not until that night. Agent Kim was silent for a moment. Mr. Chen, would you be willing to provide a formal statement? It could be instrumental in our case against Pierce. I hesitated. Part of me wanted nothing more than to see Alex Pierce get what he deserved, but another part wanted to put the whole Sterling mess firmly in my past. I'll do it, I decided. When do you need me? After arranging a meeting with Agent Kim, I had barely hung up when my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Victoria Pierce was standing there. How did you find me? I asked, too surprised for pleasantries. I'm resourceful, she replied with a thin smile. May I come in? Reluctantly, I stepped aside. She surveyed my sparse studio without comment, settling onto my second-hand couch. Why are you here, Mrs. Pierce? Victoria, please. And I'm here because my soon-to-be ex-husband is about to be indicted for securities fraud, and I thought you might like to know that your ex-girlfriend is throwing him under the bus to save herself. I crossed my arms. The FBI already called me. What do you know that they don't? Alex called me in a rage last night, demanding I lean on my father, who sits on Sterling's board, to intervene. She rolled her eyes, as if I would help him. After what he did to me, which was the same thing he did to his first wife, and the same thing he was preparing to do to Rachel with his new assistant. She smiled grimly at my expression. Yes, your precious Rachel was just the latest in a long line. Alex has a pattern: seduce ambitious women, use them to facilitate his schemes, then discard them when they become liabilities. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm curious about what you're going to tell the FBI. Are you going to help Rachel paint herself as an innocent victim manipulated by big bad Alex? Or are you going to tell them what you saw at that party, that she was a willing participant in both the affair and whatever financial shenanigans they were discussing? I plan to tell the truth, I said firmly, whatever that costs Rachel or Alex. Good. She reached into her purse and extracted a manila envelope. These might help. Email exchanges between Alex and Rachel going back 8 months. My lawyer obtained them during discovery for my divorce. I hesitated. What's in them? Business communications about Patterson. Read them, then decide what to tell the FBI about your ex-girlfriend's level of involvement. She placed the envelope on my coffee table, rose gracefully, and moved toward the door. One more thing, she added, turning back. Rachel knew about us. Alex never hid that he was married. Whatever story she's telling herself, or you, remember that. After she left, I opened the envelope and began reading. The emails painted a damning picture of Rachel's involvement in the Patterson deal. She hadn't just known about the falsified numbers, she'd helped create them, suggesting ways to adjust projections to make the acquisition more attractive to investors. Worse, there were references to their relationship that made it clear it had started well before the 4 months she'd admitted to. In one exchange from 6 months ago, she'd written, "Denver was perfect. Can't wait for our next conference." 6 months, while I was planning our future, while I was looking at apartments. When Agent Kim called again the next day, I told her everything. What I'd seen at the party, what Rachel had admitted to me, and what I'd learned from Victoria. I didn't mention the emails, specifically not wanting to implicate Victoria, but I made it clear that Rachel had been a knowing participant in both the fraud and the affair. "Thank you for your candor, Mr. Chen," Agent Kim said. "This will be very helpful." 6 months after the party, my life had settled into a new rhythm. I'd moved to a better apartment, started a doctoral program in education policy, and even gone on a few dates. Nothing serious, but steps toward whatever came next. The federal investigation had resulted in indictments for Alexander Pierce and 2 other executives, with trials scheduled for the following year. Rachel had disappeared from my life completely. According to Thomas, who'd heard it from a mutual friend, she'd moved back to her hometown in Oregon. The apartment we'd almost shared had been rented to someone else. Another casualty of the Sterling fallout. I was grading exams one evening when my phone rang, an Oregon area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello, David. It's Rachel." Her voice sent a jolt through me, familiar yet strange, like a song I'd once known by heart, but hadn't heard in years. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone neutral. "I'm in town for depositions," she said. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. Just 15 minutes. My instinct was to hang up, but something curiosity perhaps made me agree to meet her at a coffee shop near campus, neutral territory with plenty of witnesses. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups. She'd lost weight, and her one stylish hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no power suit, just jeans and a sweater. "I ordered your usual," she said as I sat down. "Black coffee, 2 sugars?" I nodded but didn't touch the cup. "You said you needed to talk." She took a deep breath. "I'm testifying against Alex next month. The prosecutor says my testimony will be crucial in the case." "Congratulations on your immunity deal," I said without inflection. She flinched. "I deserve that. But David, there's something you should know. The FBI has the emails between Alex and me. I'm aware. Agent Kim mentioned them. Then you know I was involved from the beginning, that I helped manipulate the Patterson numbers." She stared down at her untouched latte. "What you don't know is why does it matter?" My voice remained level. "The why doesn't change what happened." "It matters to me," she insisted, finally meeting my eyes. "When Alex took over the department, he made it clear that my future at Sterling depended on being a team player. The Patterson acquisition was his project. When the initial projections didn't support the deal, he asked me to revise them. And you agreed? I tried to push back, but then he started talking about restructuring, about my position being redundant. Her hands clenched around her cup. I'd worked so hard to get where I was. The thought of losing it all. So you fudged the numbers, I stated flatly. To save your job? Yes. She looked genuinely ashamed. It started small, just tweaking projections within a reasonable margin. But once Patterson was in motion, the adjustments got bigger. When I tried to raise concerns, Alex reminded me that my signature was on the documents, that I was complicit, and that's when the affair started. When he had leverage over you, she closed her eyes briefly. It's not an excuse, but yes, that's when the dynamic shifted. He made it clear that my cooperation, in every sense, was expected. You seemed pretty comfortable with the arrangement at the Chicago Grand, I observed coolly, not exactly acting, under duress. By then, I'd convinced myself it was consensual, that I was making a calculated choice. Her voice cracked slightly. It's amazing what you can justify when the alternative is admitting you're being used. I leaned back, studying her. What do you want from me, Rachel? Absolution? Nothing, she said quickly. I wanted you to know the truth, I repeated. Like how you told me the affair had been going on for 4 months, when the emails show it was at least 6. Her face paled. You've seen the emails? Victoria Pierce was kind enough to share them. God, Rachel whispered, looking stricken. Don't bother with more lies. I cut her off. You made your choices, Rachel. So did I. I've moved on. I know, she said, her eyes filling with tears. And I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee. I need to go. I have papers to grade. David, she called as I turned to leave. Were you ever going? To look for me after you left that night. Try to work things out. I paused, considering the question. No, I said finally, with absolute certainty. The moment I saw you with him, I knew exactly who you were. And that wasn't someone I wanted to spend my life with. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lifting. The last remaining threads of what-ifs and might-have-beens finally severed. 1 year to the day, after the Chicago Grand Party, I found myself at another corporate function. This time, I was accompanying Alina, a fellow professor who'd become a close friend over the past months. Her husband worked for a tech company and had been called away on a family emergency the day of their annual gala. You're saving my life, she'd insisted when she asked me to be her +1. Robert already RSVP'd, and I can't face his colleagues alone. Happy to help, I told her, and I meant it. Alina and I had bonded over shared academic interests, gradually extending our friendship beyond faculty meetings. She'd been widowed 3 years ago and understood the process of rebuilding a life after loss. The venue was nothing like the Chicago Grand, a rented event space with simple decorations and a buffet table. As Alina introduced me around, I was struck by how different it felt from a year ago. These people asked about my research, showed genuine interest in my doctoral work, treated me as someone worth knowing rather than an inconvenient appendage. You clean up nice, Professor Alina, teased as we found our table. The tie brings out your eyes. I smiled, feeling oddly comfortable in a situation that would have been anxiety-inducing a year ago. You're not so bad yourself. Alina looked lovely in a simple blue dress that complemented her silver hair. At 45, she had laugh lines around her eyes and a confidence that came from surviving life's curveballs. We'd been dancing around the edges of something more than friendship for weeks, neither of us quite ready to name it. Penny for your thoughts, she said, noticing my momentary distraction. Just reflecting, I admitted. Today's an anniversary of sorts, good or bad. Bad at the time, but in retrospect, necessary. I hesitated, then added, the party where I discovered my girlfriend was cheating was exactly a year ago. Elena's eyes widened. That's quite an anniversary. Should we be drinking to good riddance or drowning sorrows? Neither, I decided. Let's drink to unexpected new paths. She clinked her glass against mine. I can definitely toast to that. Later, as people began dancing to the live band, Alina turned to me with an arched eyebrow. So, Professor Chen, do they teach dancing in education? Policy programs these days. They might have mentioned it in research methodology, I replied, standing and offering my hand. Care to find out? We moved to the dance floor, falling into an easy rhythm together. As I spun her under my arm, I caught sight of my reflection. In a decorative mirror, smiling, relaxed, looking like a man who had found his footing again. "You know," Alina said, as we swayed to a slower song when we first started having lunch together, "I thought you were the saddest person I'd ever met." "Ouch," I laughed. "That bad?" "Not bad," she clarified, her hand warm against my shoulder. "Just wounded, like you were carrying something heavy that you couldn't put down." I considered this. "And now? Now you look like someone who's figured out that it's okay to set down burdens that aren't yours to carry." She studied my face. "It's a good look on you." The song ended, and we returned to our table, conversation flowing easily between us. Alina told me about her daughter's graduate school applications, and I shared stories from my dissertation research. It felt natural, unforced a connection, based on who we were now, not who we'd been with other people. As the evening wound down, we stepped outside into the cool night air. Alina shivered slightly, and I offered her my jacket. "Thank you for coming with me tonight," she said. "It would have been boring alone." "Thank you for inviting me," I replied. It was healing in a way I didn't expect. She looked at me curiously. "Because of Rachel?" I considered the question carefully. Partly, but more because I realized something. Tonight, what's that? That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Elena's smile in that moment was worth every painful step of the journey that had led me there. Not because she was a replacement for what I'd lost, but because she represented a future I couldn't have imagined a year ago, one that belonged entirely to me. "Want to get brunch tomorrow?" she asked as we walked to our cars. "There's this place, near the farmer's market, that makes incredible pancakes." "I'd like that," I said, realizing I meant it completely as I drove home later. I thought about everything that had happened in the year since Rachel had acted like I didn't exist. At her boss's party, the pain, the anger, the rebuilding, the federal investigation that was still ongoing, the life I thought I wanted versus the one I was actually creating. I didn't regret leaving that night, walking away from a relationship built on lies. I didn't regret any of the steps that had led me here to graduate school, to new friendships, to brunch plans with a woman who saw me clearly and liked what she saw. Rachel had made her choices, and I had made mine. The past, with all its broken promises and betrayals, had finally settled into its proper place behind me, informing but not defining the man I had become, the man who had left and never looked back, and found something better waiting ahead.